The Fentanyl Epidemic in the America. Unveiling the shocking secrets. 1. What exactly is opium? Opium, a dried version of the poppy seed pod with a bitter flavor, is a highly addictive drug. It contains a variety of alkaloids, including morphine, codeine, oxycodone, and fentanyl. Afghanistan is the source of opium. This chemical is processed into morphine, which is further refined into various opioids. Morphine abuse may develop into a habit. Morphine consumption has been linked to potentially fatal respiratory issues. Codeine is another kind of opiate. It is used to ease discomfort. It is sometimes used with acetaminophen. Cough suppressants also include codeine. When people misuse codeine, it may become addicted. The opioid drug oxycodone is used to relieve moderate to severe pain. Asthmatic patients should avoid oxycodone. Abuse may result in overdose or addiction, and in certain circumstances, death. Heroin versus opium. Both opium and heroin provide comparable effects, mainly euphoria and pain suppression. Of course, there are several distinctions between heroin and opium. Opium is a naturally occurring narcotic that manufacturers extract from the sap of unripe poppy plant bulbs. The primary element in the medicine is morphine, which helps to block pain receptors in the brain. How about opium heroin? Heroin is a synthetic drug with opium as its principal active component. The production procedure requires that the opium be converted into pure morphine, which is then chemically transformed into heroin. The method results in a compound with more potency than opium extract. The stronger the potency, the more exhilaration and, ultimately, more serious complications. From a legal sense, the FDA considers opium to be a legitimate drug when it is manufactured in licensed labs, factories. This drug is prescribed by a doctor to relieve moderate to severe pain. Heroin is an illegal substance, which means it cannot be manufactured or sold lawfully in the United States. Because of its strength, the substance is in high demand on the streets. As a result, it causes a slew of issues that impact our whole society. Heroin and pharmaceutical pain medications share chemical properties. Heroin is an opioid, and in certain parts of the United States, it is less expensive than prescribed opioids. According to some polls, roughly 5% of persons who misuse prescription medicines move to heroin usage. Heroin usage has more than doubled in the last decade. The distinction between opium and opiates. Opium and opiates are not the same thing. Opiates are naturally occurring substances generated from the poppy plant. Opiates include substances such as codeine, morphine, and heroin. Opioids are drugs that are both synthetic and natural. Opioids have an impact on the opioid receptors in the brain. Vicodin and OxyContin are two examples of synthetic opioids. The fact that the drug is natural does not make it any less dangerous to the human body and brain. Both synthetic and natural drugs are very dangerous. What exactly is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. It is a leading cause of fatal and non-fatal overdoses in California and across the United States. A deadly dosage of the synthetic opioid is 2 milligrams, which is comparable to 10–15 grains of table salt. Only laboratory testing can determine how much fentanyl is present in a tablet or powder. Fentanyl is a prescribed medicine that is also illegally manufactured and utilized. It is a medicine that, like morphine, is typically used to treat patients with severe pain, particularly after surgery. It is also sometimes used to treat patients with chronic pain who are physically tolerant to other opioids. Tolerance occurs when you require a higher or more frequent dose of a drug to achieve the desired effects. Fentanyl is sold under the brand names Actic, Duragesic, and Sublamaze in prescription form. Synthetic opioids, like as fentanyl, are currently the most often used medications in overdose fatalities in the United States, according to CDC statistics published by the U.S. advocacy organization Families Against Fentanyl. In a December 2021 study, fentanyl has been the biggest cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45 since 2019, surpassing suicide, vehicle accidents, COVID-19, and cancer. The number of drug overdose fatalities in the United States will exceed 100,000 by 2021. Over 64,000 of those fatalities were caused by illicit fentanyl, which has more than quadrupled since 2019. The vast majority of fentanyl is mass-produced in Mexico using Chinese ingredients, before being pressed into pills, or blended with other counterfeit medicines like Xanax, Adderall, or oxycodone. The fake medications are subsequently sold to unsuspecting consumers. Most individuals who use fentanyl believe they are being given heroin, and either combine it with other drugs or overdose. Fentanyl is classified into two types: prescription fentanyl and illicitly made fentanyl, illicit fentanyl. They are both synthetic opioids. Doctors use pharmaceutical fentanyl to manage extreme pain, such as during and after surgery or for advanced stage cancer, for its heroin-like impact. Illicit fentanyl is supplied via illegal drug marketplaces. Fentanyl is illegally sold alone or in combination with other narcotics. It has been found in counterfeit tablets that look like legitimate medications like oxycodone. The United States Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, reports that counterfeit medications are more dangerous than ever before. The DEA discovered that 2 out of every 5 counterfeit fentanyl tablets contain a potentially deadly dosage of fentanyl. Only pharmaceuticals recommended by a trustworthy medical expert and supplied by a certified pharmacist are safe. Fentanyl comes in a variety of forms, including tablets, powder, and liquid. The DEA has discovered brightly colored fentanyl, sometimes known as rainbow fentanyl, as a new trend in the United States. Rainbow fentanyl is available in a variety of forms, including tablets, powder, and blocks that resemble sidewalk chalk or confectionery. Rainbow fentanyl is incredibly strong and lethal, as with other forms of fentanyl. How is fentanyl used by people? When prescribed by a doctor, fentanyl may be administered as an injection, a patch applied to the patient's skin, or lozenges taken like cough drops. The illegally used fentanyl most often related with recent overdoses is manufactured in laboratories. This synthetic fentanyl is marketed illegally as a powder, blotter paper, eyedroppers, nasal sprays, or tablets that resemble other prescription opioids. Fentanyl is being mixed with other narcotics by certain drug traffickers, including heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and MDMA. This is due to the fact that fentanyl requires extremely little to deliver a high, making it a less expensive alternative. This is particularly harmful when users are unaware that their pills may include fentanyl as a cheap but lethal supplement. They may be taking greater opioids than their bodies are accustomed to, increasing their risk of overdose. How should a fentanyl overdose be handled? As previously stated, many drug traffickers combine cheaper fentanyl with other drugs such as heroin, cocaine, MDMA, and methamphetamine to enhance earnings, making it impossible to determine which substance is causing the overdose. When administered immediately, naloxone may treat a fentanyl overdose. It inhibits the effects of opioid medications by quickly attaching to opioid receptors. However, fentanyl is more potent than other opioid medications, such as morphine, and may need repeated doses of naloxone. As a result, the most critical thing to do if you fear someone has overdosed is to contact 911 so they may get emergency medical assistance. If medical staff come, they will deliver naloxone if an opioid substance is suspected. Naloxone comes in the form of an injectable, needle, solution, as well as nasal sprays, Narcan and Kloxxado. People who have received naloxone should be watched for 2 hours following the last dosage to ensure that their respiration does not decrease or stop. Some states have approved legislation allowing pharmacists to distribute naloxone without a prescription. Friends, relatives, and others in the community may use naloxone nasal spray to rescue someone who is overdosing. History. Opium is produced by the poppy plant, Papaver somniferum, and its derivatives include morphine, codeine, heroin, and oxycodone. The word narcotic refers to opium, opium derivatives, and semi-synthetic replacements for opium. Narcotics are used to manage pain, control coughs, relieve diarrhea, and produce anesthesia. They are, nevertheless, among the most addictive chemicals known to man. They are often smoked, snorted, or injected as abused substances. The first mention of opium cultivation and usage dates back to 3400 BC, when opium poppy cultivation began in Southwest Asia. The Sumerians called it hul gil, or joy plant, and it was quickly transmitted down to the Assyrians, who in turn passed it down to the Egyptians. People became more interested in opium as they heard about its medicinal properties. Many nations started to cultivate and process opium in order to increase its availability and lower its cost. Its cultivation grew along the Silk Road, from the Mediterranean to Asia and eventually to China, where it sparked the mid-1800s Opium Wars. Today, the lengthy trip from opium poppy seeds to drug smugglers starts with the sowing of opium poppy seeds. Opium is mostly farmed on tiny plots by poor farmers in distant parts of the globe. It grows best in dry, warm areas, and the great bulk of opium poppies are farmed along a 4,500-mile arc of mountains, stretching across Central Asia from Turkey to Pakistan and Burma. Opium has recently been planted in Australia, Austria, France, China, Hungary, the Netherlands, Poland, Slovenia, Spain, Turkey, Czech Republic, Latin America, Colombia, and Mexico. However, India, Turkey, and Australia are the only countries that officially cultivate opium for medical purposes. These nations generate 2,000 tons of opium each year, enough to provide the world with raw ingredients for pharmaceutical goods. China's role in the illicit fentanyl epidemic on U.S. streets. Since 2019, fentanyl overdose has become the main cause of mortality among young Americans. According to U.S. officials, China remains the principal supplier of the precursor chemicals, which are then processed and turned into synthetic opioids by Mexican drug gangs for importation into the U.S. In response to the growing danger of illegal fentanyl, bipartisan senators sponsored the End Fentanyl Act last year, a measure designed to boost border security and prevent the flow of fentanyl into the United States. This measure would mandate U.S. Customs and Border Protection will evaluate and update manuals and procedures relating to inspections at ports of entry, as needed to guarantee consistency of inspection processes, in order to identify unlawful activities along the border, such as drug and people smuggling. Senator Rick Scott presented the Eradicating Narcotic Drugs and Formulating Effective New Tools to Address National Yearly Losses of Life Act, alongside bipartisan colleagues in June 2022. On December 14, 2022, it overwhelmingly cleared the Senate and moved to the House of Representatives, where Congressman Michael Guest and David Trone submitted the House counterpart legislation. Too many Americans have died as a result of opioid overdoses, and millions more are currently suffering from substance use disorder. We must all work together to stop the flow of illicit fentanyl into our communities, Trone remarked on December 13, 2022. Trone stated, 99% of the fentanyl is coming from precursor drugs from China. And then it's manufactured by two cartels, the Jalisco and Sinaloa cartels. And they're the ones that are bringing it across the border, adding that it's necessary to stop it from the source. The Chinese city of Wuhan is recognized as the fentanyl capital of the world, following the first epidemic of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Interruptions to fentanyl manufacturing and supply in Wuhan kicked off a chain reaction that disrupted the manufacture of fentanyl and methamphetamine in Mexico, which led street drug prices to rise throughout the United States. China has played a crucial role in flooding America with fentanyl, and the dictatorship is now weaponizing the drug crisis against the United States. According to Anders Kaur, editor of the Journal of Political Risk, China is tying the fentanyl issue and negotiations to other, completely unrelated issues, such as the Taiwan issue. So, when Pelosi visited Taiwan, one of the ways China responded against the U.S. was to halt fentanyl discussions. Kaur told NTD, a sister media source of the Epoch Times. Following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in early August 2022, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, enacted a slew of punitive actions against the U.S. Beijing has suspended bilateral negotiations and partnerships with the U.S. on illegal immigration repatriation, criminal justice aid, climate talks, transnational crime, and anti-drug programs. However, the CCP has never stopped the manufacturing and export of illicit substances in China. According to Ben Westhoff, an award-winning investigative journalist, who went undercover in 3 Chinese fentanyl operations. Westhoff, on the other hand, discovered that the CCP funded certain Chinese fentanyl manufacturers. On September 3, 2022, U.S. Customs and Border Protection recovered roughly 47,000 rainbow-colored fentanyl tablets, 186,000 blue fentanyl pills, and 6.5 pounds of meth stashed in a vehicle floor compartment at the Nogales port of entry on the southern border with Mexico. In an interview with NPR in April of this year, Westhoff said, "The big problem in China is that a lot of these drugs, which are banned in the U.S., are still legal in China, so that the Chinese companies can make them with the full support of the government, and have them basically smuggled into the U.S." He said that China has attempted to stimulate the export of these hazardous and illicit substances since they are considered as an important element of the Chinese economy. And, in order to increase these exports, it began providing subsidies and tax incentives to chemical businesses that manufacture and sell these pharmaceuticals. Not only is China unable to control this sector, they are actually encouraging this industry with a slew of tax breaks, subsidies, and other grants, Westhoff said. When questioned about China's vow to the United States to prohibit the drugs in December 2018, Westhoff said that China had no intention of following through. "I believe we can take China at its word that it has taken steps to prohibit all fentanyl analogs, or fentanyl-like drugs. Doing that on paper is one thing, but enforcement is where China has really lagged," he said. "They don't have enough people on the ground to enforce the laws that are already in place. And there are often rival tiers of government at odds with one another. So you can have a provincial politician who wants to keep these enterprises operating, because it generates more cash for the region." He went on to say that producers simply need to make minor changes to the chemical composition of fentanyl to make it lawful. In its January 2020 report, the United States Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, stated unequivocally that China was the primary source of fentanyl smuggled into the United States. China remains the primary source of fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances trafficked through international mail and express consignment operations environment, as well as the main source for all fentanyl-related substances trafficked into the United States, according to the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, study. President Donald Trump signed a bipartisan package of opioid addiction laws in October 2018, calling it the single largest bill to combat the drug crisis in the history of our country. Care for Patients and Communities Act gives money for treatment and prevention, including improved care for mothers and convicts. Notably, the measure allocates $6 billion to opioid addiction prevention, treatment, and other related issues. The law includes the Synthetics Trafficking and Overdose Prevention (STOP) Act, which attempts to reduce the flow of opioids via the postal system and improve cooperation between the U.S. Postal Service and the U.S. Customs and Border Security. The STOP Act would compel all foreign mail passing through the United States to be scanned. Package-level information is available from the Postal Service. It would also necessitate the submission of correct Advanced Electronic Data (AED) for international postal shipments to the United States. Customs and border protection must be completed prior to delivery. China was obliged to boost the compliance rate for sending foreign package data due to pressure from the Trump administration. According to input from USPS management, the number of incoming shipments from China with AED grew to 85% in May 2019 from 32% in October 2017. According to the Postal Service, the STOP Act dramatically boosted its capacity to seize fentanyl and synthetic opioids from the United States mail. At the request of the Trump administration, Beijing put all types of fentanyl and its known analogs on its drug export restriction list in May 2019. However, illegal Chinese fentanyl is still freely accessible in the United States. According to a study issued in August 2021 by the United States-China Economic and Security Review Commission, Chinese fentanyl manufacturers found innovative methods to avoid regulation. When Beijing adds a fentanyl chemical on its control list, in response to U.S. demands, Chinese producers changed the molecule to generate a new fentanyl-related product. Chinese fentanyl makers switched their major market to Mexico to avoid U.S. prohibitions. Mexican cartels employ precursor chemicals supplied from China to create enormous amounts of fentanyl products, which are subsequently trafficked into the United States. Previously, Mexican drug trafficking groups were engaged in the cultivation of opium poppy, a flowering plant used in the manufacturing of heroin. But when Mexican authorities ramped up attempts to eliminate the country's poppy fields, the drug gangs moved to synthetic fentanyl, which is far cheaper to get the components and immensely lucrative. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, the quantity of fentanyl confiscated by the department increased dramatically between 2020 and 2022. CBP seized a record 14,700 pounds of fentanyl in the fiscal year ending September 2022, compared to 11,200 pounds in 2021 and 4,800 pounds in 2020. According to the DIA, a kilogram, 2.2 pounds, of powdered fentanyl from China may sell a few $1,000s. And converting the powders into hundreds of thousands of counterfeit pills may result in millions of dollars in earnings from street sales. Drug traffickers utilize private automobiles, pedestrians, and commercial vehicles to smuggle fentanyl into the United States via ports of entry, motivated by large earnings. Money laundering. According to the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission's August 2021 report, Beijing's cooperation with the U.S. has lagged in money laundering investigations, criminal prosecution, and legal support in continuing cases. Chinese regulatory authorities continue to defer requests for access to inspect and investigate potential illegal chemical production sites where precursors are manufactured. Requests are frequently delayed for days, allowing any illegal operation to vacate or clean up the premises, according to the study. Furthermore, the Chinese banking system has been utilized to launder money for Mexican drug gangs. In a single money laundering case in November 2018, U.S. officials detained numerous Chinese nationals on suspicion of laundering between $25 and $65 million for drug cartels. According to the investigation, Chinese money launderers use encrypted mobile messaging applications, like as WeChat, to transport large quantities of money from the U.S. to China, and then back to Mexico with great speed, discretion, and efficiency. According to an analysis, after Chinese money launderers shift illegal drug revenues into China's banking system, part of the money is used to buy consumer items or additional precursor chemicals, thus recycling the money back into the economy. The money, consumer items, or precursors are subsequently moved back out of China to the Mexican drug gang, since they are difficult to track. Convertible virtual currencies or cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Monero have become a popular medium, according to the research. That concludes today's video. Thank you for taking the time to view this eye-opening video. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more groundbreaking content. If you like this video, please share it with your friends and like it. Goodbye and have a pleasant day.